Good day and welcome to the Automotive Society podcast. I'm your host Siraj, and today I'm joined by our wonderful guest, Emin.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Emin is been part of the Macquarie University Automotive Society since we started almost, and you're a mechanic.
Yep.
And I'm guessing you're really heavily into cars.
No, it's definitely, I thought, might as well turn a passion into a career.
Yeah, and I think your story today will really help a lot of people in our society and around the world, trying to gauge if they want to go into cars or not go into cars, or if the way they went into cars was different to yours or similar. So I think this is more of like an interview type. So to start off with, Emin, at what age do you think you got into cars?
I think it started when I was really young. When I was like 5 or 6. Obviously, I didn't really know it had started, but my dad had bought. My mum actually had bought my dad a little Matchbox, a Hot Wheels like version of like a 1978 Fiat X19. It's a mid-engine rear-wheel drive 3-speed manual. Fiat little Targa top convertible with pop-ups and all the cool 70s features.
Yeah.
And he then decided, I've got the Matchbox, I'll go buy the real thing now. And then my mum said, oh, this was a mistake. And then when he brought it home, he started restoring it because it had a lot of rust in places. It was like the previous owner lived in Northern Beaches and he had a surfboard, so he'd left the surfboard in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
And all the salt water had dripped down into the footwell and rusted a hole through the footwell.
Yeah.
So he basically rebuilt the car from the ground up, from back to front, full body respray, bare metal, rebuilt all the mechanicals and all the electricals, retrimmed the entire car, found parts from Italy and whatnot, and put the car back together. And I think that's where it started, because I had they'd bought me a little plastic Formula One pit stop kit with one of the D-type battery electric rattle guns.
Yeah.
Where you just for fun. And then there was a picture of me and my dad sitting next to each other. My dad's putting the number plates on his car, and I've got my little electric screwdriver thing just pointing it at the car.
Oh, wow. So straight into mechanical, not into like the looks and stuff.
Yeah.
More into working on them and touching them. And
yeah, I think I've always been more of a function over form person.
so your dad's into cars, I'm guessing.
Yes, definitely.
So that possibly was a good influence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's very much a Honda fan. He's had, I think, 11 or 12 Hondas since he got his license.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Would you like to list some of these Hondas?
I think the first one would have been either a Gen 2 or Gen 3 Civic sedan, red one with like the gold trim package.
Yeah.
So all the badges and all the metalwork all the trimmings were gold. And then he bought the same model hatchback after that. We've had together like combination, like his car, and he bought it as for my first car to learn to drive manual was I think they're called the EM1 or the EJ8 two-door Civics. The EK Coupe.
Yeah, I love those.
So we went out and picked it up from Newcastle. We caught a train to Newcastle and drove it back together. And that was pretty cool as well. He's had not the current Gen Civic, the previous Gen Civic hatchback as well. He's had Gen 1 CRV, two Gen 1 CRVs. We've had 2 CRX Del Sols. We've still got one. We've also had an Accord. Yeah, I think that's. I'm sure there's one or two there that I've missed and I didn't really know about or he hasn't told me about yet. But he's got a whole like photo album full of every single car he's ever owned.
Wow, that's crazy. So yeah, safe to say a good Honda fan.
Yeah.
For sure. And I used to be one of those too. I've had quite a few Hondas. Not the long list that your dad has had, but still quite there. So what do you drive today, Emin?
Well, today, technically not my car, but I am driving my dad's Del Sol.
Yeah.
because my car is in the process of having a major surgery, and we're going to be putting a Renesas 13B into it, and it's going to be quite the project, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, normally people would be like, "Oh, putting a 13B Renesas into your RX-8, that's probably broken yet again." But no, it's not an RX-8, is it?
No, it's going into the 1992 MX-5.
So NA MX-5 with the pop-ups,
Yeah,
getting rotary love.
yeah, all the good bits.
Bold choice with the Renesas. Normally people do the FD motor, the REW.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's a bit more cost effective. It kind of doesn't hurt the wallet as much, and I think it might be a better choice for blue slipping or engineering wise, getting it to be legally registered to the car.
Yeah, well, you're not really making the extra 20% power with this,
Yeah.
so that's pretty good. And from people who actually know you well, will know that you're all about NA power.
Yeah. Yeah, all about naturally aspirated power or linear power bands. I really like linear power bands. So I wouldn't be opposed to at some point having a supercharged car. I'm not totally against turbocharged car, but to have fun and really get the most out of a car, I prefer to have natural aspiration.
Yeah, and I don't know if Emin's going to be really, really humble about this or modest, but you're actually quite fast of a driver on the road. Legally, I'd like to say. This was in Mexico.
In Mexico, yeah. private road in Mexico.
Private property in Mexico.
Yesterday.
My uncle had it, and and Emin down here is a crazy man. Even his NA little Del Sol that makes not much power was hard to keep up with me in my 300 kilowatt Evo 8. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I guess like it just I don't think I'm as fast as Siraj suggests I am, but I definitely like to push the cars that I own as far as I'm comfortable going. I only like to go as far as what makes me happy, what brings me joy. So I don't do things to the point where it becomes life endangering. I think.
I'm sure Smokey Nagata said the same thing.
Yeah, Smokey Nagata was never there. He wasn't on that freeway. It was someone else.
He
was framed.
Yeah. He was just doing a comfortable speed down the highway as you do.
Yeah, 60 kilometers an hour from what I recall.
That's it.
Yeah.
So your journey from your dad's car, what was your first car?
First car that I bought or first car that I technically owned or like kind of first car I ever had experience driving?
Well, yeah, the first car you got into modifying and working on.
So the first car that I got into working on, I guess you could, if you want to call it that, was the EM1, but it was just a single cam. It was a D16 engine, 1.6 litre single cam.
Yep.
The one that we picked up from Newcastle, and the first thing I did on that was I changed the gear knob.
Nice.
And that was the extent of the modifications because I went overseas for a school trip and I came back and the car was gone. And I said, "Where's the car?" And they said, "Oh, it broke down, so we sold it."
No.
Yeah, they sold it. It was a really cool car, and I've got a wallpaper. I don't know if you remember, but there was this guy that did online car rendering called Emma Hussman.
Yes.
Yeah, he had done an EM1 render with like a nice body kit, GT wing, canards, T37s and everything, and it looked great. And it was the exact same color as the car that I had, and that was my template. That's what I was going to build.
That's crazy.
And then my parents went and sold it. But at the time, I was in year 10 at the time, so I didn't really know that I was going to turn cars into a career.
Yep.
So I wasn't looking at mechanical things, what I can fix, how I can fix things. I was just like fiddling around with the car, having fun.
Yeah. Well, a gear knob is definitely a great cheap first mod that makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
Shout out to episode 2 of our podcast. Go and watch it for useful mods.
Yeah.
So that was the first car you worked on.
Yeah.
Did you do anything in high school towards cars? Like, as in, did you do any courses in high school?
Unfortunately not, because I wanted to, from year 10, we were allowed to choose some of our subjects. There were a couple of mandatory subjects like maths and English, but some people decided to do TAFE courses or VET courses.
Yep.
I wanted to opt for a VET course as well, but I can't remember too well why, but for some reason the school couldn't facilitate that to do a mechanical kind of course.
So you actually missed out.
Yeah, I missed out on doing that kind of stuff at school.
Ah, damn.
Yeah,
I reckon you would have started your career a lot earlier.
Yeah.
Then.
I mean, I tried different excuses to try and get some kind of automotive thing into school to give them a reason to let me do a car thing. Like for one of my physics projects, I brought my RC buggy that I used to race in St Ives.
Yeah.
I brought that out for a science experiment. I convinced the teacher that it was a good idea, but I just really wanted to rip around the school in an RC car.
Well, that's always good to see. People who like cars, involving cars into every other thing they have. Boring and mundane tasks like school and physics.
Yeah.
Okay, so then let's say you finish high school.
Mm-hmm.
What did you go around driving in?
I was still on my L's when I finished high school because I was advised by my parents, but that studying was more important than learning to drive. So I didn't get my P's until maybe half a year into my apprenticeship.
Yeah.
So that was 2014. So I started when I left school. I was driving around I was learning to drive in my parents.
Wait, so you started being an apprentice mechanic without a license?
Yeah.
What? That's crazy.
I was confused as well because I asked my manager, the guy who was interviewing me, the service manager. I said, "So you don't need me to have a license?" He's like, "No, it's fine. You'll get your license soon, right?" I was like, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah.
But yeah, I was driving my parents' X-Trail. I think it was a 2013 or 12 model X-Trail, or their 2012 Civic, which they specifically bought. They needed a new car, and they said, "Oh yeah, we'll buy a manual car. Do you like this one?" I was like, "Yeah, it looks cool." And then I ended up, when I got my P's, I ended up buying a 2004 GDB Impreza RS, naturally aspirated 2.5 liter 4-door sedan.
Ooh, that's a Subaru start.
Oh yeah, that's where my Subaru life started.
Yeah, I didn't even know about this car, to be honest.
Really?
No, I didn't know about it.
Okay.
So there you go. So you started off with a Subaru.
Yeah,
yourself.
that was the first car that I ever bought with my own earned money.
That's crazy. A lot of people start on Subarus.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a very good first car to have.
You can't resist the allure of a flat 4.
Really?
It's almost Porsche-like.
I think it's more the cheapness of it.
Oh, okay.
I think it's the fact that they're cheap and easy and look cool when you spend a little bit of coin on the aesthetics. Yeah, fair enough. So my parents had the same issue where I wasn't allowed to get my license because study was more important as being from an ethnic family. But I booked my own L's and I went and got them without my parents knowing.
Oh, okay.
So I rocked home and I was like, "So guys, when are you taking me out driving?" And they were like, "Well, you're never getting a license, so it doesn't matter." And I was like, "I already have my
You're
license."
never getting your license.
Yeah, I was like, "I already have my license. Don't worry about it." And then with my P's as well, I booked my P's in myself, and I took my mum out, being like, the morning off, I told my mum, I was like, "Mum, I'm taking your car. I have a P's test today." And she was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "I'm getting my license today." I was in year 11, or at the end of year 11, and it was at that point that my parents realized how real it was that I was going to start driving. Well, obviously, I had driven with them before on my L's and did my hours and all that.
Yeah.
But it was just a shock that they were like, "Oh, it's already time for P's," and my dad said, "No, don't worry about your mum's car. Take my car and do the P's test on my car."
What was your dad's car?
My dad's car was a Accord Euro.
Ooh.
Honda Accord Euro, 2008, I think.
2.4 liter VTEC power.
Yeah, baby. It was good. It did the job, I guess. I don't think my mum's car was very road legal anyway. So it's probably better that I did it in the Accord. But yeah, I got my P's first try. My mum was ecstatic because it took my mum 6 tries to get her full license. But, she should not be on the road.
Oh, okay, yeah. One of those mums. I got one of those mums as well.
Yeah. Should not be on the road.
No.
But yeah, so here we are today.
Yeah.
So then Forester. Oh no, what did you?
No. After that, after I think I had the Impreza for about a year.
Yeah. Did you
In
do
that
anything
time,
to it?
oh yes, definitely,
What did you do?
definitely. So the very first thing I did, again, gear knob.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
when I got a super cheap auto gear knob, it looked like it had an upside down exclamation mark on it with the two silver rings on top.
So tell me more about it. It's a what 5-speed manual?
Yeah, 5-speed manual, 2.5 liter dual cam, so 1 cam per head.
Yep.
And it was
Well, it kind of needs to be with a flat 4, doesn't it?
well, no, it can be quad cam, 2 cams per head.
Oh, true. Yeah.
So it was like it was almost a WRX, but it really wasn't. But I really wanted it to be. So I started. So I did the gear knob, of course, and then stereo. Did speakers and head unit.
Classic P-plater
Yeah,
mods.
yeah. For the green, for the red peas, got to get the music pumping. Let people know how awesome you are. And then after that, I did a Canon, a diff back Canon Supercat muffler.
Nice.
That fell off.
For people who don't know what a cannon is, it is a very, very big abyss of muffler.
It's just the dark void.
Yeah.
We're all
where all farty noises come from.
we're all decency and kindness to people's eardrums goes out the window.
Yeah, it's based. So I'm gonna say it was probably a 3.5-inch, 4-inch cannon.
No, actually,
4-inch tip.
the inlet was 2-inch.
Yeah.
And the outlet was 2.5, I think, or 3.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah, it was pretty modest. It
That's
was
not too
nice.
bad. My first cannon was 4.5-inch
Oh my god.
outlet. So when I wanted to burst eardrums, I wanted to burst everyone's eardrums.
Yeah.
No discrimination.
Yeah, no, it's everyone's bleeding.
Everyone experiences it.
Yeah. And then not long after that, I got some BC Racing V1 coilovers. And to go with them, I bought the 17-inch WRX wheels in gunmetal grey.
Wow, as a P plater, you got coilovers.
Yeah, I wanted to go fast around corners.
Damn.
So I needed that stability, setting the best lap record around the Macca's drive-through.
Yeah.
But once I'd put the coilovers in, literally within a week of putting the coilovers in, the car got sideswiped on Pacific Highway and had to be sent off for repair. So I'm glad I didn't have the wheels on there as well.
Nice.
I only had the factory 16s on it.
Yep.
So and then after everything got repaired and I got the car back, I got the suspension inspected, make sure my brand new coilovers were okay. Bought some fully hectic Hankook Optimos K415s, slapped them on the 17s and put those wheels on, and the car was mint.
Nice.
And then I think the last mod I did to it was unequal length headers, of course.
Oh, okay. That's a good mod.
Yeah, the fuel economy went out the door.
I did not expect a P plater to go to the headers.
Yeah.
Well, usually it's limited to exhaust, stereo,
Yeah.
interior bits and pieces, carbon fiber wrap everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, I was borderline buying a WRC body kit.
Were you?
Yeah, wing, like front bar, side skirts, rear bar, and a wing to complete the whole. And my workshop controller at the time cracked the joke, and he said you should put a W in front of the RS, so you've got a WRS as like a pretend.
Oh my god.
And yeah, it was borderline that. And this was at the time when the laws for P-platers had changed so that you could legally drive a WRX on your Ps.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. So
if you had bought a WRX at that time, you would have been the coolest P-plater around, because that law of letting P-platers drive WRXs lasted 3 months.
Yep.
Before out Sydney West, the amount of WRXs that got pulled over with P-platers on them going way too fast instantly got banned. So all WRXs were banned for P-plater literally 3 months after they made that rule.
Yeah.
But if you already had one, you had an exemption.
Yeah, I remember this. They said if you've already bought it and it's under your name, it's the only vehicle you own,
you're allowed to drive it.
Keep it. Yeah.
You can get an exemption.
Yeah.
Which would have made you the coolest P-plater around, driving a P-plate prohibited car legally.
Yeah. Yeah. So in my head, I was like, WRC body kit, driving an actual WRX. So I decided to sell the car. And I ended up making the money back for the mods that I did.
Yeah. For any international listeners, I apologize. P plates. So in Australia, we get our learner permit, which lasts a year, and you have to do 120 hours of driving with a supervising full licensed driver. And then you get a provisional license, a red provisional license, which lasts a year, and then a green provisional license that lasts 2 years before you can sit your test for your full license, which is no restrictions.
Yeah.
So P-platers are generally regarded as 17, 18-year-olds fresh on their car license and want to do dumb stuff to their cars. And
dumb
also
stuff in their cars.
and drive around like hoons.
So then, realizing that I could legally own and drive a WRX, I decided to sell the car. But then I ended up breaking my foot playing basketball.
Oh, how do you break your foot playing basketball?
So I rolled my ankle.
That's like breaking your hand playing soccer.
Well, I've fractured my wrist playing soccer.
How do you fracture your wrist playing football?
Because I was the goalkeeper, and when I went to save the ball, my wrist, my hand wrapped around the goalpost.
Okay, that
because
makes
the ball hit the end of my hand and like pulled it around and fractured it.
Next minute, I thought Emin was gonna be like, I was a striker, and I broke my wrist because I hit the ball too hard with my foot.
The shockwave went all the way up my leg into my wrist.
Snapped it.
Yeah. No, I ended up. I rolled my ankle. I think inwards.
Ouch.
And it ended, and it was so I was turning around to face the opposing team, and I was running at full pace, and the guy with the ball had come up on my left. So I turned around to my left, and my foot dragged on the ground, and my full weight ended up on my left ankle, and I got emulsion fractures through the top of my foot, up my wrist, up my ankle. So I was in a cast for a month, and in that month, they changed the laws again, and I'd already sold my RS. So when I went, I only had an opportunity to look at one WRX. It was a bug-eye, so a previous shape from the one that I already had.
Yeah.
And the guy wanted way too much money for the car because it had too many problems. It had an engine light on, and I told him, I was like, "What's the engine light for?" And he's like, "Oh, don't worry about it." And I was like, "But engine lights usually mean bad things, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, no, I took an O2 sensor out, so it kind of like runs a bit rough sometimes and makes pop and bang noises, and it's all the cool stuff." I was like, "But engine lights aren't cool. Engine lights mean bad."
Oh, I'm glad you had that much.
Yeah, and we argued about it for a bit. And I was like, "All right, well, I'll give you $8,000 for the car." And he's like, "No, I'm not taking anything less than 10." I was like, "Mate, the car's got 250,000 kilometers on it.
Far out.
I'm not paying $10,000 for a car with an engine light and high kilometers."
Jeez. You know, those WRXs, that gen, goes up and down quite a lot. It fluctuates in price still, even to this day.
Because I think from memory, they had a special edition that was at the time the world's fastest WRX. I think it was called the S207.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they had that special edition. Like, they've had many special editions over the years, but the S207 and now currently for the VA STIs, the S209, world's fastest production WRX and STI.
Wow. So I did not know about this special edition. I knew they had one like cool one, but I thought it was just like tuned by STI or something random.
No. So they actually had like a lighter, faster WRX or STI, I think.
Oh, okay. So that's like Evos have the RS, for example, which is like the race spec, so the LiDAR.
Yeah, and even the S2000s had one as well, but we didn't get them. They in the States they had the S2000 CR, which was a competition ready.
Ooh.
Yeah, stripped out interior.
I've never heard of
more
this.
power. I think it had a higher RPM. And yeah, no radio, no power windows, I think.
That sounds fancy.
And a hardtop. That's where everybody gets the factory hardtops from.
Factory hardtops. Yeah, but I only ever seen people with the spoon hardtop.
Yeah.
And the spoon hardtop is quite popular for S2Ks.
Yeah, so they had...
I'm a big fan of S2Ks. I really like them.
I
feel like if I wanted a Honda, that's the Honda I want.
Yeah, I'd get an NSX. Gen 1.
I think I'd get an S2K over the NSX.
Really?
Yeah, I think I would. Because I'd be too scared to drive an NSX around every day.
Yeah, that's very true. You'd get robbed almost every second.
Yeah.
People will be at your throat saying, "Give me that car."
It'll be too low, and then, like, it's such a weird experience. I've never owned a mid-engine car.
Yeah.
I've driven heaps, but never owned one. So
Right. Okay.
they don't seem very practical.
They're very practical.
I feel like the S2K would be more practical than an NSX.
Any car can be as practical as you want it to be if you're willing enough to try.
Of course, said so rightly by an MX-5 owner.
Yeah.
A car that fits nothing.
What do you mean? I fit a toolbox in my MX-5.
What's the size of this toolbox?
It's a normal size toolbox. I don't know why I'm waving my hands around trying to show you guys what the size of the toolbox is. But yeah. Yeah, no, so that mission failed. Getting WRX failed.
So you did not get a WRX?
I did not get a WRX. My hopes of having a turbo flat 4 dashed by New South Wales government once again.
Yeah. As the Nini state, it's called.
Yeah.
Okay, so what did you do? How did you resolve this issue?
I resolved this issue by taking the rear muffler off of my dad's Honda CRV.
I don't know if that's a fix or if that's going down a completely different rabbit hole.
So because I was like, I need car noises. I need something that it was manual. It was a CRV
So instead
Sport.
of buying another car, you decided to hack up your dad's car.
Yeah, no, I didn't hack it up. It was bolted on. So I just unbolted it and put it in the boot.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Most people players I know just angle grind the
No angle grinders here.
Okay.
So yeah, I drove around in that until I found something to drive, but I didn't get the chance to find something to drive because that car got written off while I was driving it.
The CRV.
Yeah, for the pettiest reason.
What did you do?
There was maybe a golf ball sized dent in the fuel tank after the car got rear-ended. So
Yeah.
it got rear-ended. It was a light tap.
Yeah.
Both cars were fine.
Yeah.
But because my dad wanted the car to look nice, he said, "Oh, the paint's cracked and everything's falling off." So sent it to insurance, and they said, "Oh, the exhaust has been pushed into the fuel tank, and there is a dent. So we have to write the car off for safety reasons." And we're like, "But it's not leaking fuel, so yeah, it doesn't matter. Policy says we have to write the car off."
Okay, well that's there's two things wrong with that. One, yeah, if it's not leaking, what's the hell's the point? It's just a tank.
Yeah,
Secondly, why not just replace a fuel tank?
I don't know. I guess the insured value of the car.
Exceeded.
No, the repairs
the
exceeded
fuel tank.
yeah, I guess so. I guess so.
How expensive is this fuel tank?
I have no idea. I didn't question it.
Honda CRV, the most expensive fuel tank you can buy.
Yeah. So after the CRV, my quest for finding a car continued, and I miraculously got my hands on a 1989 Unos Roadster. Ooh, a proper like a Jap imported Unos Roadster, and I was so excited about the car. I didn't do any proper inspections on it. I just said I'll take it because it was painted in the new Sol Red as well, the metallic maroon red.
Oh.
And it was low, and it was cool, and it had all like the side mounted number plate. And I was like, "Yep, this'll do. I'll take it. It's got an LSD. It'll do skids. It's just fine."
That is true. Sounds appealing to a P-plater.
Yeah. And then after buying it, it slowly started falling apart.
Oh no.
Yeah. I asked one of my friends to adjust they had manual wing mirrors.
Oh yes.
So I asked him to adjust the mirror, and I didn't realize that it was seized, and he just like bent it and broke it off.
Yeah.
It almost hit the ground. We almost lost that mirror.
I know that you're traumatized by that because I told Emin to adjust my mirrors the other day on my MX-5, and Emin goes, "No." And I was like, "What do you mean no?" And he's like, "I'm not touching it." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well then I'll adjust it. Can you just relax?" And he was like, "No, don't touch it." Like, why can't I touch it? He said, "It'll fall off." What do you mean it'll fall off?
So have you adjusted the mirror?
I did adjust the mirror and it did not fall off, surprisingly. Okay.
Wow, that's amazing. Can't believe this.
Can't believe the mirror that's meant to be adjusted is actually adjustable.
I'm sorry, I've had a bad experience with wing mirrors, and even I've had 3 MX-5s since the first one, so including the Unos, I've had 2 more.
Yeah.
And
so what happened in the first one? Did you sell it?
The first one, it was great car. I'd bought some really nice teen shock and spring suspension off of a friend, and I put that on.
Yep.
Perfect height, everything was beautiful. The only problem was that the wheels that the car came with were too wide, so it scrubbed at certain steering angles, and the back scrubbed when the car went through bumps.
This sounds familiar.
But I realized that the reason it didn't scrub in the other car was not the ride height. It was because the shocks were seized. So they weren't really doing their job. So it was just stuck in the same position.
Jeez, was that a bumpy ride?
It was a very bumpy ride.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I regretted putting the old suspension back in because I loved the teens so much. It was really smooth. It would just glide through corners so well.
Yeah.
It was very stable. The only problem was that it scrubbed. The rubber was touching the guards. After doing that, I noticed that the crank pulley or the harmonic balancer had started wobbling. The inevitable death wobble of the 1.6 liter engines.
Is this the short crank problem?
Yeah, it was a short nose crank engine. And I'm guessing the previous owner or previous tech who worked on the vehicle had not done the timing belt replacement properly, and they'd caused the crank pulley to come loose and wobble. So in a and I noticed some rust as well. Like I could put my finger through the bottom of the car and touch the carpet.
That's no good.
Yeah, that's no good. So I sold that. Actually, I've got to correct myself. The CRV got written off after I sold the Unos. So I went back to driving the CRV, and then it got written off. And I insisted on buying another MX-5. So I managed to find one in Wollongong, or Shell Harbour to be more specific.
Yeah.
Picked that up from an old couple. That was a 1993 with a short nose crank again, but it didn't have the wobble of death.
That's a good sign.
It even came with a hard top.
Ooh.
Yeah. Low kilometers. Only had 110,000 kilometers on it. Everything was
jackpot.
It was jackpot. It had AC, but it didn't have power steering. I wasn't fussy about that. I preferred no power steering.
Yeah, I think I prefer no power steering.
Yeah.
I don't have it now, and I've never been like, I wish I had it.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a necessity.
It's a tiny car. It weighs like 900 kilos.
Yeah. So we picked that up, drove it back. It was a beautiful ride. I ended up putting the teens in that car, and that was, again, beautiful suspension. It worked great. But I only got to enjoy that car for 2 weeks because it got written off as a result of a lady running a red light and hitting the car head on.
Oh. And, okay, actually, did that hurt?
Yes,
Yeah.
but only because my left foot was firmly planted on the clutch. So when the accident happened, my foot slipped off the clutch and hit the firewall, and the pedal went up the side of my leg. The clutch pedal flicked and went up the side of my. So it's kind of scratched my foot, and my foot was sore for a bit.
Yep. I'm nodding my head furiously because I got rear-ended in my MX-5 last week.
Oh yeah.
And it turned out, because this cabin is so dang small. Okay,
Yeah.
It turned out I was sitting at a traffic light and I wanted to stretch my left foot. So I was like, "Ooh, I'm going to stretch it." So I put my foot all the way out. Like I was pressing the clutch, but I also started leaning back into the seat to like just stretch my leg out completely flat out. And at this exact moment is when the guy behind me, a Camry, decided to rear end me and sent my entire hip into like oblivion into the leg, which then ended up with the same stuff that happened to you happened to me. And oh my god, my leg was so sore for the next day basically.
Yeah.
And then it fixed itself. But I had a movie to watch that night. I was watching the new Spider-Man. Great movie. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I saw it the other night. Loved it.
10 out of 10. And so I was like, I'm not going to the doctor because I gotta
calls.
I gotta watch Spider-Man. I've been waiting for this movie for so long.
Yeah.
I gotta watch it on release day. Kidding me? I'm not going to the doctor.
You can take my leg. I don't want it. I'm gonna watch Spider-Man.
But it was like a tiny little bump, right? This guy's number plate was smashed. His bumper was like misaligned so badly. And you look at the MX-5, not a scratch.
Yeah.
Not a scratch. Took it like a champ. What a little tank.
Yeah, no, they're great. They're troopers. Like even after the accident, I just turned my car on and drove it back to work, back to the dealership. And this lady had to call a tow truck because her big, fancy, brand new Mitsubishi Outlander couldn't start anymore.
Yeah, there you go. So head-on collision.
Yeah, head-on. It was head-on, but like we were at a right angle. So she was turning right into a side street.
Yeah.
And I was coming down the main road, Pacific Highway.
Okay.
And it was wet as well. So MX-5s don't have ABS. So I hit the brakes and nothing happened. I just slid straight into the front of their car.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't understand what was going through her head. She'd stopped in the middle of the road after seeing me and my friend coming through the intersection.
Yeah.
and didn't keep going. If she kept going, it would have been fine.
What the hell?
So,
Random
yeah.
hesitations that people have.
But yeah, that accident hurt more on the inside than it did on the outside.
Oh, I can imagine.
I did shed a tear or two in the car, and then we moved our cars to the side of the road and went through all the car accident procedures. I had to call the police because it seemed like they were doing a bit of dodgy business.
What kind of dodgy business?
They had me on the phone with their cousin who was supposedly a lawyer. And
Oh,
they suggested going to court. And I said, no, we're not going to court. I'm going through my insurance company and I'm calling the police.
Yeah, that's a bit dodgy, eh?
Yeah. Because what they told me in person was different to what they told the police. Because they told me they had insurance and they were covered and everything and they lived here. But what they told the police officer was they didn't have any kind of insurance whatsoever. The car was rented and they were from Melbourne.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so... And this accident dragged on. I think it was GIO I was insured with. They called me about a year and a half later and said, yeah, we're still fighting these people. Do you mind just refreshing, like going over your statement again? I said, the statement's the same. Like whatever I told you guys happened that night that's what happened that night. Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, unfortunately, this is a procedure. We have to make sure that everything matches up. And yeah, there was still... I still don't know who... like how they resolved that, what happened.
But you got your money back.
Yeah, no, I got the money back. I bought the car back as well, and ended up doing a chassis swap with another MX-5, which I picked up for a measly cost of $2,000.
Wow.
But it came with a broken differential, so it broke 5 minutes after buying it.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, that was good and bad, right?
Yeah, well, I knew it had a damaged driveline,
Yeah.
and I knew the risk of driving it was like breaking mechanical components, but it was a risk I was willing to take for $2,000 MX-5.
But hey, you had a whole spare MX-5 at home anyway. So.
Yeah, exactly.
So you swapped everything from the old jackpot MX-5 into this
new jackpot MX-5.
New jackpot MX-5,
Yeah,
which
pretty
wasn't
much.
as great, I'm guessing.
Well, no, it had its pros and cons. It had a really nice front lip on it.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay, so it had a $200 pro and probably minus $700 of cons.
Yeah.
And it probably had higher kilometers.
Yeah, no, this one had
No hard top.
300,000 kilometers, no hard top. But it was not written off shell and chassis. So I was pretty happy with
Better than nothing.
Yeah, better than nothing, yeah.
Okay, so what sort of mods do you recommend people with their MX-5?
MX-5s, if you just want to have fun and enjoy the car, I'd just stick with tires and suspension. I think
that's it.
Yeah, I think that would be, if you really want to be one with the car, I guess you can get yourself a bucket seat, like Sparco Sprints, bolt straight onto the factory rails. It's the easiest seat replacement you can do. For suspension, any entry level coilover kit can be sufficient, really. And tires, I really, really enjoy my Yokohamas that I've got on my Del Sol, or my dad's Del Sol, the 8008Rs. Very, very happy with their performance. I've had Hankook RS4s as well, and they don't perform anywhere near as good as these.
I've heard
Yokohama.
RS4s are not so great in the wet. They're good in the dry, but not so great in the wet.
Yeah, the RS4s, they can't handle as many heat cycles as the Yokohamas can, and I've noticed that they tend to understeer before they grip.
Ah, okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, whereas the Yokohamas, they carry the car through the corner like it's on rails.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
A bit more expensive, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
I'd say it's worth it.
So, this MX-5,
Yes.
how long did it last?
This MX-5, after doing the chassis swap took about 2 days, which was fantastic because I was allowed to use 2 hoists at work because I started on a Friday afternoon. One of my friends and I rolled the damaged shell into the workshop and started unclipping every wiring connector or harness that was connected from the chassis to the engine and gearbox. We had everything loose and prepped to remove both subframes. And the good thing about the MX-5s is they've got the power plant frame, the PPF, that mates the gearbox to the differential. So when you unbolt the subframes from the car, it stays rigid.
Yep.
So you can just what we did was we had a trolley jack under the front subframe, and when we separated the body off of each car, we just rolled the engine, gearbox, differential, and suspension all together around the workshop.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it just it was like it was on casters. So we just rolled everything around, swapped them over, bolted everything back up, and we were done by Sunday afternoon.
That's so good.
And yeah, didn't even need to do any blues. You didn't technically need to blue slip anything, but for legal reasons, I decided I'll do it because the engine numbers were different, but the engines were identical.
Yeah.
So I went and got the engine number matched to the chassis.
Okay. So you did it properly.
Yeah. I
Got it all done.
didn't want any extra headaches
Yeah.
from getting visits or getting pulled over by the police and saying this doesn't match that.
Yeah. So it was on the road.
Yeah, no, it was on the road for I think 3 years. 3 years before that one met an untimely end, I guess, or a pause. It's had a pause in its life. While driving, made some mistakes.
Yeah.
Made some decisions that were not the best, and it ended up meeting a traffic light.
Yes. Mistakes that rhyme with those round things with holes in the middle. Some would call donuts.
Yeah, tasty. This one wasn't tasty. It was a bit sour.
This one was a bit sour.
Yeah, a bit of a sour donut.
I guess it was an expensive mistake.
Yes, very. It's not even the fun. I think I'm only a quarter of the way through the cost of this repair, this build. So getting the bodywork repaired and the chassis fixed, I decided not to write this one off because or claim insurance. I didn't go through insurance with this one because they would have written it off immediately without inspecting it.
Of course.
And I really didn't want to let it go. Not because I don't see the monetary value of this car. I see the sentimental value. I'd rather keep the car because it just means a lot to me. It's my rock.
It's the devil Miata.
The devil Miata.
That
it will be reborn.
It crashes, but it gets reborn.
Yeah, if anyone knows what we're talking about, they know.
Renewed, and it comes back.
Yeah.
So that's what's in the build now with the 13B Renaissance.
Yeah, 13B. It's had the chassis work and all the everything panel related repaired. It hasn't been painted yet, but all of the structural work has been repaired. That was a very, very expensive, sour donut. $7,000 sour donut. So I hope Krispy Kreme doesn't jack up their prices that high.
Oh, you would be crying. So that brings us up to date on your cars, basically. Yeah. And then your dad's practically given you the Del Sol.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because that thing breaks down every second day.
Well, it only breaks down when he's got it. When I've got it, nothing goes wrong.
Is that because you're used to things going wrong and you ignore them?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And he's more like, Emin, this is not working.
Yeah. Every time even if I drove to their house just to visit them, and then I turn the car, I try and start the car when I'm ready to leave, and it doesn't start. It's only happens when I'm at their house. I don't know what it is.
So that was your latest issue, wasn't it? That it wouldn't start every now and then.
Yeah. So it was a intermittent crank but no start. So we figured out that it was getting almost everything it needed. Like it had timing was right. It had spark, but on occasion it wouldn't have fuel. But we knew that the fuel pump was working, so my boss and I started probing into the electricals of the car, started looking at the ECU as well, and we noticed that the fuel injectors weren't pulsing when they were meant to. And then eventually the car started again, but it wouldn't start the first go, wouldn't start the second go, and it would start the third go. But then it'd switch back to starting the first go after that, and then it'd take 2 tries to start it. So we decided to send the ECU off to get inspected and tested, and it turns out that some internal components, some electronic components had leaked electrical acids and damaged the circuit board. So we had that repaired, and now the Del Sol is back to its somewhat former glory.
Yep. Okay. So just a fried circuit.
Yeah, some damaged circuitry.
Yeah, easy fix. So now the Del Sol's back.
Yeah.
What else does it need?
I think the coilovers that it has fitted to it are not very good. Very eBay China spec coilovers. So I'm gonna try and buy some new coilovers for it, and maybe get some new suspension bushes for it. And other than that, I'm pretty happy with the car, with the way the car drives and handles.
Yeah.
It needs some like cosmetic repairs. Also my fault. But otherwise, it's a great car. Very capable car.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And might I add that Emin has had another car or two cars in the middle that he's completely missed on.
Oh, true.
There was a Subaru Forester.
Yeah, that was a SG 2005. It was borderline SG5, SG9. Turbo XT Forester 2.5 liter that made 197 kilowatt at the wheels and the most angelic turbo flutter in the world.
It did. It
was
did
beautiful.
sound great. The lack of the blow-off valve was
Yeah.
great.
Sadly, Siraj thinks it was the worst purchase I've ever made.
Well, yes, because every time I saw it, it was broken, and that means it was broken all the time.
Well, maybe you were the problem then.
Yeah, you reckon?
Every time you saw it, it was broken. Every time I was there and you weren't, it wasn't broken. So
Wasn't it? It never went into gear. It wouldn't go into gear.
yeah, but I fixed that. It's a common fault on all Subarus. It wasn't a Forester fault.
What, that your gearbox doesn't gearbox?
No, so what happens is when you fit heavy duty clutches to the gearboxes in the Subarus that have the factory pressed steel clutch fork,
Yeah.
the weight, the extra pressure from the heavy duty clutch
Bends the fork.
punch. It doesn't bend it. It punches where the pivot point is inside the gearbox.
Yeah.
It punches through the fork
Oh.
and it splits the fork in half.
Oh.
So there's I think there's a company in Melbourne called Veris Engineering who make I think it's either it's an anodized CNC machined fork.
It's like a billet fork.
Yeah, it's basically a billet fork, and it's 10 times stronger, and it can
Wow.
handle way more power and pressure.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's a common fault for anyone who.
Not an easy repair though.
No, no, it wasn't an easy repair. It was a 2-day ordeal
Yeah.
that I had to borrow some workshop time to do.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So there was that, and then occasionally it would misfire.
Yeah. So what we figured out with that was it was randomly running lean or rich. Sorry, it was running rich, and I found out after a long drive down to the south coast that the O2 sensor had the tip of the sensor, where the cage that houses the sensor and the sensor itself had snapped off before the turbo, and it had gone through the back of the turbo and shredded the turbines in the turbo and then out the exhaust and into the front of someone else's car. So
Wow.
So that meant that the car wasn't receiving the proper air-fuel ratio readings, and it was compensating for the lack of information by dumping extra fuel. So under load at low RPM, the car would bog down and wouldn't move. But once more air was being added to the excess fuel, it leveled out and it got the right airflow ratio. So I replaced the O2 sensor, and that solved that problem.
Okay. Okay.
So it wasn't all bad.
It wasn't all bad.
It was definitely
though.
the most fun and most practical car I'd ever owned.
That is true. That is true. But it was also very expensive in the upkeep and the maintenance. So it had to go eventually to make way for cheaper cars and for the MX-5 to actually have a reborn life. You know?
Yeah. More funding. I decided that the MX-5 was more important. So I decided while the Forester hadn't cost me more money to list it for sale. And then I made another mistake.
Yes. Instead of getting cash like most people do when they sell a car, Emma decided to get a bit of cash and another shitbox.
Yeah. That shitbox being a 1986 Mitsubishi Triton single cab.
But it wasn't an average Triton.
No, it's
I will actually post a photo of this Triton on our Instagram page.
post one of the good pictures, not the shit ones.
Yeah, you send me a photo and I'll post it up on
Okay.
Instagram,
All right.
I'll show you guys what I'm talking about when I say it's not a standard Triton. Everything from the front to the back was custom made for the Triton. It used to be a show car.
Yeah, yeah. It was it had airbag suspension, so at the press of a button, you could sit on the ground.
Literally.
Yeah, the car wouldn't move. I've done. No, I'm not going to say that. The car can do things on the ground that normal cars can't do.
Yep. Yep. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. We'll say that.
Okay.
So it would dump on its chassis rails.
Yeah.
And the tires would go above what?
Yeah, they'd still be touching the ground, but they wouldn't really have the same weight on them anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. But it had a custom fuel tank from what I believe.
It was out of a Commodore.
And okay.
It was a Commodore fuel tank, but it was still not the original tank, and it was much smaller.
Yeah. Yeah. Much smaller from what I remember.
I think it was a 30-liter tank, maybe 35-liter, which was almost, I think, a half the size of the original tank.
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy. And then the interior was completely custom. It was like Alcantara with like extra subwoofers and extra speakers everywhere, and very, very, 90s spec, early 2000s spec modified show car.
Yeah, no,
where it was definitely less function, more form.
Yeah. No, it was at the time I thought, yeah, this is really cool. I get to get rid of a potential headache. I have some cash in my pocket and I've got a car to drive as well. So in my head I thought this is a great deal. The guy's an idiot for swapping his car for mine. But then that the problems in the car decided to rear their ugly heads. So I think Siraj fondly remembers one late night adventure on the freeway, on the side of the freeway.
On the side of a freeway at what, 11 o'clock at night? 10 o'clock at night?
Yeah. When you got there, it was 11 o'clock.
Yeah. And I own a car trailer. And Emin calls me and he goes...
He'd owned the car trailer for less than 24 hours, I think.
Yeah. It was a brand new car trailer at the point. I was super excited. I was like, yes, I had just made car ramps for it that day because none of my cars actually made it onto the car trailer. And Emin goes... I'm broken down on the side of the freeway. Can you come pick me up with the car trailer? And I was like, oh no. Yes, I will come pick you up. So my girlfriend and I, in the middle of the night, decided to take a trip down the freeway. And as we're driving up, it's pitch black, but there's not a single light.
The only lights you could see was from the giant semi-trucks barreling down the freeway at 100 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, oh my God. And Emin decided to break down right around...
I didn't pick to break down there.
Emin's shoebox decided to break down right around the curve in the 110 zone. At least you had it in the leftmost lane. At least
I had it in the breakdown lane.
At least it was in the breakdown lane. Well, there wasn't much of a breakdown lane.
Yeah, I'd gone too far up the hill.
Yeah. So where he was, there was a ditch in the freeway. So instead of a breakdown lane, he was basically in the left lane on the freeway. So our freeway has 3 lanes. So obviously the rightmost being the fastest, the middle one being where people want to overtake trucks, and the left one being where all the massive trucks drive on.
Yeah. So they're basically semi-trucks are forced to drive in the left-hand lane so that people can overtake them easier, because I'm pretty sure trucks are limited to 100 kilometers an hour everywhere in Australia. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
I thought they'd do 110. I've definitely seen them do 110.
Their computers are limited to do 100.
Oh, I did not know
that. But people change that.
Oh,
so that they can go faster, so they can earn more money in less time.
Nice. I did not know that.
Yeah. So trucks are, because you can see sometimes it's, on the side of the road it says buses and trucks limited to this speed.
Yeah.
But like the trucks are physically limited to 100 kilometers an hour.
There you go. Learn something new every day. But okay, so that was that, and I am there. We don't have a winch on my trailer, so we're pushing this Trident up a hill onto a trailer with my new ramps. I'm like, at least I get to try out my new ramps that I made. Made them from Bunnings wood.
Yep.
Thanks to Mitch. He will be coming as a guest on this podcast eventually. And so we pushed this Trident onto very heavy Trident, by the way.
Yeah, no, lots of steel.
Lots
of steel.
Very heavy. Pushed this onto the trailer while avoiding trucks that are going past at 110 k's an hour. Thankfully, Emin had a friend who had a Golf that we could turn on the hazards a little bit up the road so they could see us before they turn the curve and go into us. So yeah, we did that in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
We didn't have enough time to even strap it down at that point. We're like, so we slammed it. So because it sat on the chassis rails and the tires don't actually touch the ground at that point. So we could just slam the car, just air it out, all the air suspension, put it on the trailer. It's not going to move anywhere. It's 2 tons of steel on like just sitting on its chassis rails. Not even a rolling shell at that point.
Yeah.
And
It was just a giant paperweight.
yeah, and then we drove it back and then strapped it up and took it to his workshop. And yeah, that was an adventurous night.
Yeah, no, I'm very grateful for Siraj. Oh, sorry, I'm very grateful for Siraj's girlfriend for forcing him to answer the phone that night.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
But also very grateful for Siraj being there to help get the car and myself out of a very hazardous and sticky situation.
Yep.
But that wasn't the only mishap that car had.
No.
I had a very late night adventure once again. But
Actually, I'd
out west.
also like to tell something. This breakdown where we risked our entire lives and did everything for was what was wrong with it, Emin?
The fuel gauge didn't work on the ute.
So it ran out of fuel.
It ran out of. Long story short, it ran out of fuel.
Emin made us pick him up at midnight, risk our entire lives, die multiple times almost by trucks barreling down the freeway because he ran out of fuel.
Well, we didn't know it was fuel at the time because the car would still start, but it wouldn't run for very long because these cars, they run on mechanical pumps, and the mechanical pump draws fuel from the tank instead of a pump in the tank pushing the fuel up to the engine.
Yeah.
So the mechanical pump had issues as well. It was failing. So it wasn't drawing. It still had a little bit of fuel in the tank. I reckon it would have been enough to get back to Sydney, but it was the angle, the steepness of the hill, and combined with the failing mechanical lift pump, it caused it to fail. But long story short, put it simply, there was no fuel.
Nice.
But then a few weeks later, I think, or a month later, I ended up stuck with a puncture at 12 o'clock at night, and me having to run around to different petrol stations in Western Sydney in Bankstown trying to find someone who was open who had a puncture repair kit to fix a puncture. So that was also another. And then that was the last straw. I was like, I'm not driving this car anymore. So I took it to my parents' house, dumped it at their house, and I took my dad's car.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with a puncher. That happens to anyone. But I think at that point you were just so over the Triton.
Yeah.
That,
I had enough.
It doesn't matter what it was. Like, even a bee would have stung you in the Triton. You would have been like, that's it. I'm selling the car.
Damn this car and its white paint attracting all the bugs.
Yeah, that's it. So then you started driving the Del Sol and the Triton had to go, which it eventually did.
Yeah.
Which allowed for some funds to buy this 13B Renaissance.
Yes.
And the gearbox and the stuff needed. So now fabrication begins.
Yeah, the big fix continues.
So thankfully, Emin works at a performance workshop of some sort, and you do welding, you do fabrication.
Yeah, we do light fabrication. Most of our work is light fabrication and heavy mechanical work.
Yeah.
Very little servicing.
So you should be more than enough skilled to do this entire car from now on.
Yeah, no, I should be able to. I've got a lot to learn going from working in dealerships to working at a private shop that does fabrication and heavy mechanical work. So I've still got a lot to learn, a lot to put under to add to my skill set. So welding will be one of those things which will come very handy. It will be very important for the 13B build. Yeah, the MX-5.
But fair enough, Emin.
Yeah. So now I'm kicking around in the Del Sol, and then the MX-5 is gonna get its new heart.
Yeah. So the next time we catch up with Emin, hopefully this MX-5 is almost there. And yeah, we've got more plans we have for next year.
Yep.
Emin and I are planning something big, so we will let you guys know at a future episode when we have enough equipment for podcasting to have 3 people on board or 4 people on board. I would love to go through it with everyone. I think we won't do it justice without having the third person in. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Emin, for coming on the show.
No worries. Happy to come on anytime.
So yeah, it was a good story, and I think a lot of people will learn at least something. And yeah, if you have any questions for Emin, just comment on the photo of his Triton on our Instagram page. The Instagram page is the Automotive Society _ and I will be posting this episode up and posting a photo of his Triton up at the same time. So feel free to go and comment and let us know what you think. Thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you next time.